The day gravity stopped working for exactly 60 seconds. At exactly 11:42:16 UTC, gravity disappeared. Not weakened, not reduced, not altered by a tiny fraction. It simply stopped. There was no warning, no earthquake, no strange light in the sky, no explosion, no sound. One moment, the world behaved exactly as it always had. The next, every object that was not firmly attached to Earth began drifting upward. Coffee left mugs, children floated out of swimming pools, cars became strangely light as their tires barely touched the pavement. Thousands of birds suddenly found themselves unable to flap correctly because the air around them no longer behaved the way millions of years of evolution had taught them. People instinctively reached for the ground, but there was nothing to hold them there. Within 3 seconds, millions were floating. Within 10 seconds, millions more were screaming. The oceans did something no scientist had ever imagined. Without gravity pulling them downward, the surface of the sea didn't explode into space. Surface tension and Earth's atmosphere held much of the water together for a while. Instead, massive walls of water slowly rose hundreds of meters into the air, forming impossible blue mountains that reflected the sun like giant mirrors. Entire coastlines watched the ocean climb into the sky. Ships drifted upward with it. Whales floated silently through clouds of seawater suspended above cities. Fish swam through enormous spheres of water hanging in the atmosphere. For one breathtaking moment, Earth looked less like a planet and more like an aquarium shattered inside a dream. Then came the message. No loudspeaker announced it. No satellite transmitted it. No phone received it. Every human being heard the exact same voice, not with their ears, inside their minds. Clear, calm, ancient. Gravity isn't a force, a pause. It's a prison. The sentence lasted less than 4 seconds. Every language, every accent, every person understood it perfectly. Even infants stopped crying. People later described the experience in exactly the same way. It didn't feel like someone speaking to them. It felt like remembering something they had always known. 58 seconds remained. At NASA Johnson Space Center, engineers stared at instruments that had become meaningless. The International Space Station had not moved. The moon had not changed orbit. Earth continued rotating. The sun still held the solar system together. Only one thing had changed. Gravity no longer existed. On Earth, impossible. According to every law of physics, removing gravity from Earth should have destroyed the entire planet instantly. The atmosphere should have escaped. The oceans should have vanished. The moon's orbit should have changed. None of those things happened. It was as though an invisible hand had reached into reality and removed only the tiny portion of gravity that humans experience while leaving everything else untouched. No equation allowed this. No theory predicted it. Albert Einstein himself would have called it impossible. 22-year-old paramedic Daniel Ortiz had just stepped out of an ambulance when he found himself rising into the air. Training vanished. Instinct took over. He grabbed the nearest traffic light pole. Around him, people floated helplessly. Some laughed in disbelief. Others panicked. One elderly woman slowly drifted toward the glass windows of a 20-story office building. Daniel pushed himself from the pole. Without gravity, every movement sent him drifting unpredictably. He caught the woman only seconds before she struck the building. She clung to him, crying. Above them, a city bus had lifted several meters from the road. Passengers inside slammed against the ceiling. Traffic lights hung uselessly while motorcycles, bicycles, and loose debris floated between skyscrapers. No one knew whether they would ever come down. Across the Pacific Ocean, Captain Mai Nakamura watched something impossible unfold beneath her cargo aircraft. The ocean was rising, not in waves, as one enormous body. Clouds of mist formed around gigantic floating domes of seawater. Her instruments still indicated altitude correctly. Yet below, the sea was coming toward her. The autopilot disconnected. Air pressure fluctuated wildly. Wind patterns collapsed. Gravity had shaped Earth's atmosphere for billions of years. Without it, air itself no longer knew where it belonged. Her plane entered a strange layer where water droplets floated beside pieces of ice. Birds, seaweed, and thousands of terrified fish. A dolphin passed outside the cockpit, swimming through open sky. Captain Nakamura blinked twice. She later admitted she wasn't checking whether she was hallucinating. She simply wanted to appreciate the sight before dying. 40 seconds remained. Deep beneath Switzerland, inside the world's largest particle accelerator, alarms began flashing, not because experiments had failed, because they had succeeded. For decades, physicists had searched for a particle capable of explaining gravity. They had found nothing. Now, their detectors were recording particles that had never existed before. Tiny flashes, appearing everywhere simultaneously. Each lived for less than 1/1,000,000th of a second. Each carried impossible energy. Each ignored every known law of quantum mechanics. Researchers nicknamed them immediately prison particles. No one understood why. The name simply felt correct. In Tokyo, millions floated between skyscrapers. Yet something even stranger happened. Cats did not float. Thousands of security cameras captured the same phenomenon. Dogs drifted upward. Birds floated. Humans floated. Cars floated. Cats remained firmly on the ground. They walked calmly through streets filled with airborne people. Some sat quietly, looking upward, watching, as though they had expected this day. The internet exploded. Videos flooded every platform within seconds. Why aren't cats floating? Scientists had no answer. Neither did anyone else. 33 seconds remained. The voice returned. This time, it asked a question. Do you remember where you lived before gravity? Every human froze. Not because they knew the answer, because somewhere, deep inside memories they had never possessed, something moved. Tiny flashes, an endless black sky, stars unlike any constellation, structures larger than galaxies, people walking through space itself. Then the images vanished. Everyone remembered forgetting. Professor Elena Varga, a neuroscientist in Budapest, collapsed onto the ceiling of her laboratory. Not from fear, from the overwhelming sensation of déjà vu. She had experienced déjà vu before. Everyone had. This felt different. It wasn't a memory repeating. It was an entire lifetime trying to return. Faces, cities, languages she had never learned, machines impossible to describe, and one phrase repeated endlessly. We chose gravity. She wrote those words on a tablet before the vision disappeared. Hours later, millions of people around the world would independently write the exact same sentence without ever speaking to one another. 20 seconds remained. Astronomers observed something even more terrifying. Every star in the observable universe had shifted position, not by much, barely measurable, but enough. The night sky had changed, not because stars moved, because, for 60 seconds, humanity was seeing the universe from somewhere else. Earth hadn't traveled, reality had. Inside the Large Array Observatory in New Mexico, radio telescopes suddenly pointed themselves toward a location no engineer had selected. Emergency overrides failed. Motors ignored manual commands. Every antenna faced the same empty region of space. Then, they detected a signal. Not radio, not light, not gravity. A completely unknown form of information. Computers could not decode it. Artificial intelligence couldn't classify it. Yet when technicians converted its mathematical pattern into sound, the room fell silent. It was the heartbeat of a human child, perfectly regular, steady, alive. The recording lasted exactly 60 seconds. 15 seconds remained. Around the world, floating people noticed faint lines appearing in the sky. At first they looked like cracks in glass. Then they began glowing, golden. Countless geometric patterns stretched from horizon to horizon. They weren't clouds. They weren't auroras. They looked like the hidden framework of reality itself, as if someone had peeled away the universe's surface and revealed the machinery beneath. Children pointed first. Adults followed. No one had words. Imagine seeing the blueprint of existence. Imagine discovering that space itself was built, not grown, constructed. Every glowing line connected to another, forming shapes so vast they enclosed entire continents. For one impossible minute, humanity saw the architecture of the cosmos, and every engineer on Earth later admitted the same unsettling thought. It looked designed. 10 seconds remained. The voice spoke one final time. Its tone had changed. It no longer sounded ancient. It sounded afraid. You were never meant to remember. Silence. Then, they found you. For the first time since the event began, the voice hesitated, as though listening to something far away. Then it whispered 3 words. Don't look up. Almost everyone did, and what they saw would become known forever as the impossible face. Nobody listened. The voice had whispered only 3 words. Don't look up. Human curiosity has always been stronger than fear. Nearly every person on Earth instinctively lifted their eyes toward the sky, and for less than a heartbeat, they saw it. Not everyone described it the same way. Some called it a face. Others insisted it was an eye. Many believed it resembled an impossibly large human silhouette, stretching across the heavens. Children later drew it as a smiling giant. Physicists described it as an impossible geometric structure. Religious leaders compared it to ancient descriptions of angels. Artificial intelligence systems analyzing millions of eyewitness reports reached a disturbing conclusion. Every witness had seen something different, yet everyone had looked at the same thing. Exactly 60 seconds after gravity vanished, it returned violently. There was no gradual transition, no warning. Everything that had been floating fell. Cars slammed into highways. Cargo containers crashed onto docks. Aircraft fought desperately against sudden changes in air pressure. Millions of tons of seawater collapsed back into the ocean. Entire coastlines disappeared beneath walls of water, larger than skyscrapers. The impact generated tsunamis that circled the globe. Glass shattered, bridges twisted, cities shook. The sound of billions of objects striking the earth at the same instant became the loudest event humanity had ever recorded. Then, silence, not because the world had become quiet, because everyone was listening, waiting, wondering whether gravity would disappear again. It didn't. The first official estimate of casualties was impossible to comprehend. Governments refused to release numbers. Hospitals overflowed within minutes. Emergency frequencies became useless. Entire satellite networks crashed beneath the flood of distress signal. Every nation declared a state of emergency. Yet something strange happened. Despite the unimaginable destruction, scientists noticed an anomaly. Millions of people who should have died had survived, not because they were lucky, because something had slowed their fall. Security cameras captured impossible footage, people dropping from 30-story buildings, only to decelerate during the final few meters. Cars crashing toward the ground, then gently settling onto the pavement. Ships falling from suspended ocean, landing with far less force than physics predicted. No one understood why. It was almost as if something had changed its mind. Within hours, every major observatory on Earth compared data. The stars had returned to their original position. The strange golden lines in the sky were gone. The mysterious signal had vanished. Every instrument reported normal conditions, except one. The Deep Space Quantum Array in northern Canada continued receiving information, not from space, from Earth itself. The planet was transmitting. Professor Elena Varga stared at the decoded waveform. It wasn't random. It resembled brain activity, billions of overlapping neural patterns. Someone asked the obvious question, whose brain is this? Nobody answered, because everyone in the room already suspected the truth. It looked like all of them combined. Thousands of kilometers away, in a small village in Peru, 12-year-old Mateo Rivera woke in the middle of the night screaming. His parents rushed into the room. He wasn't crying. He was drawing. Without saying a word, he covered sheet after sheet of paper with perfect circles, each connected by straight lines. Hours later, similar reports arrived from every continent. Children, only children, drawing exactly the same impossible pattern. They had never met. They spoke different languages. Some were only 3 years old. Yet every drawing was identical down to the smallest detail. Mathematicians soon confirmed something astonishing. The pattern represented a 4-dimensional object, one that should not be drawable by an untrained human mind, especially not by toddlers. 3 days passed. Gravity behaved normally. Life struggled to recover. News channels replayed the same footage endlessly. Floating whales, airplanes surrounded by fish, cities beneath suspended ocean. The impossible face. Experts debated every explanation imaginable. Secret weapons, dark matter, quantum instability, mass hallucination. None survived serious scrutiny. Every theory explained one mystery, while creating 10 more. Then the moon changed. Not its orbit, its color. Astronomers noticed a faint silver glow covering the side facing Earth. At first it appeared only through sensitive telescopes. By the second night, ordinary people could see it. The moon looked brighter, not illuminated by sunlight, illuminated from within. Spectrometers detected no known source of energy. The glow emitted no heat, no radiation, nothing measurable. Yet every evening it became stronger. People around the world stood outside watching it. Many reported the same uneasy feeling. The moon wasn't shining. It was watching. NASA compared modern images with photographs taken decades earlier. An intern made a careless mistake. He accidentally aligned pictures from different years using a new image processing algorithm. The room went silent. The moon hadn't changed after the gravity event. It had been changing for 57 years. Slowly, so slowly that no human had noticed. Every year, its glow increased by less than 1/10,000,000th of a percent, far too little for anyone to detect. Until now, which raised a terrifying question. Had the countdown already begun before anyone realized it? Meanwhile, hospitals around the world encountered another mystery. Patients who had briefly lost consciousness during the event began speaking unfamiliar languages, perfectly, languages that no longer existed. Ancient Egyptian, Sumerian, Linear A, even scripts that archaeologists had never deciphered. One elderly man in Brazil spoke for 6 uninterrupted hours. Linguists translated only 3 sentences. We built the prison. We volunteered. They promised we would forget. The man remembered none of it afterward. Military satellites searching for damage discovered something impossible beneath Antarctica, a perfectly circular region, nearly 80 kilometers wide, invisible before the event. Now, it reflected no radar, no light, no infrared radiation. It wasn't black. It simply could not be observed. Images contained an empty circle, where reality itself seemed unwilling to exist. Every attempt to fly over it failed. Aircraft navigation systems turned around automatically. Drones lost communication. One autonomous vehicle continued anyway. Its final transmission lasted exactly 4 seconds. The video showed endless darkness. Then, thousands of stars. Then, daylight. Then the feed ended forever. The drone was never found. Professor Varga couldn't stop thinking about one sentence. We chose gravity. Why would anyone choose gravity? Why call it a prison? Unless there had once been another way to. She searched every mythology ever recorded. Greek, Mayan, Hindu, Norse, Sumerian, Aboriginal. One strange similarity appeared again and again. Stories about beings who once walked among the stars. Without wings, without machines, without ships. Simply walking. Historians dismissed these as metaphors. Professor Varga no longer believed they were. Exactly 7 days after the event, every electronic device on Earth activated simultaneously. Phones, televisions, digital billboards, laptop computers, even disconnected monitors. Every screen became white. Then one sentence appeared. No logo, no source, no timestamp, only 7 words. The second test begins in 30 days. No one knew who sent it. No one knew what the test was. But everyone understood one thing. The first 60 seconds had only been the beginning. 30 days, that was all humanity had. No government argued about whether the message was real anymore. It had appeared on devices that had never been connected to the internet. Old digital watches, hospital monitors, abandoned advertising, displays with no electrical power. even calculators stored inside museum exhibits. Every investigation reached the same conclusion. The message had not been transmitted. It had appeared. The world changed faster in those 30 days than it had in the previous 30 years. Wars stopped, not because peace had finally been achieved, because nobody could justify fighting an enemy when reality itself had become uncertain. Military satellites were redirected toward the moon. Particle accelerators ran continuously. Quantum computers modeled trillions of possible explanations. None matched the evidence. One by one, the greatest scientific minds on Earth admitted something they had never imagined saying. We don't know. Professor Elena Varga locked herself inside the European Center for Fundamental Physics. She no longer searched for an explanation. She searched for a pattern. Every strange event seemed unrelated. The children, the glowing moon, the impossible signal, the face, the ancient languages, gravity. Then, just before dawn on the 23rd day, she noticed one number. Every anomaly followed the same mathematical sequence. Not Fibonacci, not prime numbers, not powers of two. The values matched something almost forgotten, outside theoretical physics: information density. It was as though reality itself were slowly increasing the amount of information it allowed humanity to perceive. Her hands trembled. If she was right, nothing had actually changed. The universe had always looked like this. Human brains had simply been unable to process it. Until now, she tested the theory. Inside a shielded laboratory, volunteers were shown ordinary photographs. A mountain, a forest, the moon. Most saw nothing unusual. But after exposing the images to the same mathematical frequencies, hidden inside the original gravity event, people began noticing things. Not imaginary things, real things. Structures hidden in the background, perfect geometric lines crossing mountains, impossible shadows beneath ocean, patterns inside clouds. It was like discovering an invisible language that had surrounded humanity for its entire existence. The universe had never been empty. It had been encrypted. On the morning of day 30, every telescope on Earth automatically rotated toward the moon. No one issued the command. Observatories tried to override the movement. The motors ignored them. Within seconds, thousands of telescopes stared at exactly the same point, near the center of the lunar surface. Then, something emerged, not from behind the moon, from inside it. The glow that had slowly intensified for decades gathered into a single point. It expanded. The moon did not crack. It unfolded. Gigantic plates separated with mechanical precision. Entire mountain ranges shifted aside. Hidden beneath billions of years of rock was a structure, perfectly smooth, perfectly black, larger than continents. No impact crater, no natural formation. The moon had never been entirely natural. It had been built. Panic spread across Earth, not because people feared an invasion, because the object resembled something familiar. The children's drawings, every line, every circle, every impossible angle. They had not been imagining anything. They had remembered it. Then the transmission began. No radio waves, no sound. Every human mind received it simultaneously. This time, there was no voice, only memories. Not personal memories, human memories, millions of years old. People collapsed into tears. Some laughed uncontrollably. Others stared silently into space, because they were watching history, not Earth's history, their own. Humanity had not evolved on Earth. Earth had been a refuge long before the dinosaurs, long before mammals, long before complex life. A civilization so advanced that stars were its cities had discovered something beyond the edge of the observable universe. Not aliens, not another civilization. Something older, something that fed on intelligence itself. The more a species understood reality, the easier it became for that presence to find them. Knowledge was a beacon. Entire galaxies disappeared after learning too much. Civilizations survived only by forgetting. So humanity made an impossible decision. They built a prison, not around the creature, around themselves. Gravity, time, biology. limited perception, linear memory. Every physical law humans considered fundamental had been engineered not to imprison their bodies, to hide their minds. Earth was never a prison planet. It was a sanctuary, a place where an ancient species erased its own past, generation after generation, until eventually they forgot they had ever chosen to forget. The moon had always been the lot. Every orbit, every eclipse, every tide, it quietly maintained the prison for hundreds of millions of years, until something began opening it. Professor Varga understood immediately. The gravity failure had not been an attack. It had been a diagnostic test. Someone, or something, was checking whether humanity still remembered enough to protect itself. Then another image appeared inside every mind. A map, not of Earth, not of the Milky Way, of reality itself. There were scars, great tears stretching across space, each marked with a date. Every extinction event in Earth's fossil record coincided perfectly with one of those tears. The asteroid that ended the dinosaurs, the Great Dying, mass extinctions that scientists had never fully explained. They had not been random. Each time, the prison weakened. Each time, something tried to enter. The room around Professor Varga vanished. She stood somewhere else. There was no floor, no sky, only endless darkness, filled with billions of glowing threads. Each thread represented a conscious civilization. Most were broken, extinguished. Only a handful still shone. One thread was Earth. It flickered. Weakly, she reached toward it. A voice spoke behind her, not the same one from before. This voice sounded human. We were the last. She turned. Standing before her was a woman, or something wearing the shape of one. Her eyes contained entire galaxies. Her skin shimmered with moving constellation. She smiled sadly. You call yourselves humanity. We called ourselves the gardeners. You built gravity, Alina asked. No. The woman looked toward Earth's fragile thread. You built it. The word struck harder than any explosion. You mean, not you. The woman smiled. The version of you that existed before memory became optional. Alina felt thousands of forgotten emotions flooding back. She remembered cities suspended between stars, children playing with black holes like toys, people crossing galaxies without machine, music that altered space itself. Then, she remembered the war, not against an army, against an idea, against something that consumed civilizations by allowing them to know too much. The gardeners had discovered that absolute knowledge carried a price. The universe watched those who understood it completely. The only escape was innocence. Earth had become the greatest hiding place ever created, not because it was remote, because nobody searching for ancient intelligence would ever suspect it had willingly become primitive. Suddenly, the woman's expression changed. She looked upward. For the first time, fear entered her eyes. They found the signal. Darkness trembled. One by one, the glowing threads began disappearing, not breaking, being erased. Something enormous moved beyond reality. It had no shape, no color, only absence. Where it passed, mathematics stopped making sense. Time folded inward. Stars vanished without exploding. The gardeners did not run. They simply closed their eyes. We bought you 300 million years. She whispered. Use them wisely. Alina woke on the floor of her laboratory. Only 1 second had passed. Outside, every person on Earth was looking toward the moon. The black structure had closed again. It looked ordinary, silent, ancient, as though nothing had happened. Except every child on Earth smiled at exactly the same moment, and somewhere beyond the edge of the observable universe, something had finally learned, where humanity had been hiding. To be continued.